I'm going to be making another finger painting today, and about a year or so ago I went to a natural preserve in Arizona with some good friends of mine. It was the Hassayampa Preserve up near Wickenburg. It was a beautiful place, beautiful day, and I had a really great time with my friends. And I've decided to capture that day and those memories with a finger painting. I'm starting out right now just putting down the base coat, which I tend to like to do with finger paintings. I put something down first. It's not always the same. If you look at my other videos, I sometimes put down coats that are going to be in the finished colors, but I also like to just use buff, which is an unbleached. It's like titanium white, but unbleached. And that's kind of a nice color, I think, to just put the base down. And since this is a gallery wrap canvas, I need to paint the sides as well. And I think for today's painting, I'm going to leave the sides just this buff color. I won't wrap my painting around to the sides. And this painting is going to use a combination of palette knife and finger painting. For the next part of my painting, I will use my palette knife to just sort of lay out the basic sketch of what my painting is going to be. Doing this first coat, I could have used my nice Liquitex brush, and I would have, except that I had to wash it from a previous painting. It was still pretty damp. And if my paintbrush is too wet, then it doesn't work real well in trying to use it for painting. So I wanted it to dry out just a little bit more. For my ground colors, I'm using raw sienna, Payne's gray, raw umber, just various shades. My usual favorite golds and browns, and I like to throw in some blues and green too. I just kind of go with what I feel like at the moment. So I'm going to kind of lay in a pathway here. And there'll be lots of shrubbery and trees and things up here and some sky. And then I think that I'll have some kind of water down through here. And the reason that I like to do a combination of palette and finger paint, it's kind of my new favorite way of painting. The reason I like that way is because it helps me be slightly more abstract. It's still a realistic type painting, but it's not as detailed as what I try to do when I have a brush in my hand. I usually tend to start with the sky, but I think today I'm going to start with this path. So I will just kind of start tossing in some various colors and kind of see where it goes. I like to lay down the color with the palette knife, and then I go back and finger paint it in. This dark color here is Payne's gray, it's not black. When I want shadows and things, I really like the Payne's gray. And like I say in my other videos, it's better for you to use gloves. I may actually go get a pair and actually try that today. I just like to feel the paint, so I tend to not use gloves. This is acrylic washable paint. Still, I'm sure it's healthier to use gloves. I'm not really concerned about picking up or cleaning off the paint that was on my knife before. I'm just going to start putting down some colors for the ground. I also have to think about where I want my, there was a big tree. This just kind of went out. I'm trying to just kind of keep this free feeling. Now I can also use brush. There's nothing wrong with using a brush in here. I think I'll probably go back and add with my brush a lot of color, and I'll be putting in some sky color up here as well. I'm just kind of getting a feel now for what I may want in my painting. When I first start putting down these colors, it can kind of start just looking like a mess. But at this point, I'm just going with the feeling of the painting and getting the basic colors down that I know I'm going to want in the painting. And it will take shape as I go along, and the more coats that I put down. And I can change it up as much as I want as I go too. And I don't want this background to run into my tree here, so the tree will be put down last. And sometimes I'll just kind of throw in some other colors, just like there I threw in a little alizarin crimson just to see what I get. I might decide that I like a little of that in there. It can look, and your brain will interpret all of this. And I'm going to try a glove, because in all of my videos I tell people to use a glove and then I don't do it. See, that feels a little different to me than just using my finger. I kind of like using my finger. Isn't quite the same effect. Kind of interesting though. Maybe I'll get used to it. And then this can always, you can wipe off your finger with whether you have gloves or your own fingers, you can wipe that off with water. So now I'm going to, I think maybe I'll try doing the rest of the painting keeping a glove on. I guess I can think of gloves as a new tool, because the feeling is different than just with my finger. I'm just dipping my finger in Payne's Gray, which is a very, very dark blue, and some buff. And I can dab over that, and that adds some shadows and things for me too. Some highlights up where the sun might be catching it. So this kind of finger painting type stuff can just be kind of fun and relaxing. So now I'll put in my ground up through here. Now for somebody like me who usually uses a brush and does more detailed type work, this really gives a different effect than what I'm used to. So I kind of wanted this to look like it was the bank of water, with this being a path, so I have to work on that and make sure that the eye can tell where path ends. I may even come back over this with a brush. I can add a few brushes to this as well to kind of help give a little bit of distinction here to this edge. The eye needs to see this as something different here. Some little reeds and things coming up maybe. There are so many things at your disposal. So don't be afraid to try new things. So I'm going to start putting in some sky back there. And this is just a reminder that this is my tree, and I'll be doing a lot of detail work on my tree. I think I kind of like this for my background shrubbery. I probably won't do anything with that, but I'll work a bit more on my path. So for my sky, I think I'm going to have a kind of a pretty sky. And my background painting that you can see there, that was from an early morning hike that I took during the spring bloom 2017 here in Arizona. Beautiful southwest bloom. And I used ultramarine and pink for that sky. And I really like the colors. So I'm going to go for that again. I decided to add a little bit to my water here, so I'm trying a bit of, that's quite bright. I'll probably be toning that down, but I wanted to get a bit of color in here so that that's more obvious that this is, I don't know, I might like that. This is water down in here. We need to know that. Maybe a little bit of brown would brown. Kind of tones it down a little bit. I'm going to leave that for the sky now. And then I'm going to start laying in my tree, which I've pretty much lost now. And the thing is, when you're working with painting, you want to have different values. You don't want to have everything the same, and so that you can't really make out one thing from another. And a lot of my values are quite a bit the same right now. So that's something that I'll have to work on. Warm gray is another color that I love because it's not quite as yellow as the buff. And I'm using a little bit of black. Black goes a long way. But that gives some distinction here to my tree. Now I sometimes use palette knife for this part, and I may go back and do that. I'm just kind of playing around now with the different tools that I have. Brush, finger paint, and palette. They all work really well. And then there are lots and lots of little guy branches that just come out everywhere. To get different variation in my color, I'll dip it in the paint gray, and then I'll dip it in the buff. I might even grab some green or blue or whatever I feel like at the moment. So the idea here is I have a lot of abstract stuff going here, but I also have just enough detail that you can see that it's a tree, and your brain will interpret a lot of it too. I want the attention though to be on my tree, so I may tone down some of this and then bring a lot more bright greens and golds in here, and I'll do more on the ground. Okay, I think that's the basic shape of my tree. I think I like that, okay. And I want to bring in a bit more bright colors. I need contrast in my painting, but I'll wait to see what I end up with up here before I know what to do down here. This all needs to be filled in with something. Okay, I'm going to be making a few changes because in looking at this, I let it dry for a little bit, and acrylic paints don't change a whole lot, but they can change slightly, a little bit darker. But I'm realizing that I'm not real happy with the overall color scheme. I'm going to change things up, and that I want to lighten the sky a lot. As I mentioned, there's just not enough contrast in my painting, and I know I'll be adding a lot of greenery and brightening it up in other areas, but I would really like to lighten the sky, so I'm going to do that first before I come through and do any more on my foreground and tree. So I think what I'm going to do is perhaps grab some cerulean blue. I have really liked the color combination of the pink with the ultramarine in my previous painting. It actually gave it an early morning look that I was going after. But this day's hike was later in the day, and because I have more darkness down in here, even though I know I will be lightening that as well, I still want to change the sky. So I'm just going to really lighten that up. Kind of a whole different feel to it. And where I run over things, I'll just come back and I'll have to, might have to change a little bit of my tree again, once again, but that's all right. I just don't like this so dark. And I think it got a little bit muddied up. By muddy tone, I just mean that it's, when I used my glove to do the finger painting, I ended up running a lot of colors together. And when you do that too much, you end up with a muddy tone. I think I like using just my fingers better, but I was trying to maybe be a little bit more, show you some safety by using the gloves. I think I like this color better for this particular painting. So keep that in mind too. What works for one painting may not work for another painting. This just needed to be lighter. So much of this is just continuing to work on things until it just looks right to you. And adding layer after layer. Okay, now I'm going to start working on my foreground up here and adding some brighter colors. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and be bold now and bring in my hooker green, which usually I find to be a little bit bright, but I think I need to add some brightness. Maybe even a little bit of white. Now, white added to green like this can make it really kind of muddy, so you have to be careful adding white with the green. It doesn't necessarily make a lighter green. I like a little bit of grass to be coming out into here. This is further away, so I want this a little more nondescript back that way. And I put down quite a few layers. For this type of tree, I'm going to try my wonderful little scrumbler. gives such a different look. Now it's starting to have more of the feeling that I was after. This needs to be cleaned up here, and this transition needs to be fixed up a bit here. Okay, I think I'm going to let that sit now. And I'll let that dry, and then I will probably let it sit overnight, and I'll look at it off and on over the next several hours and decide what I want to do for finishing. I still need to add some more contrast areas, probably another layer or two down here, and I need to do quite a bit of work on the tree still and bring in some definition of branches when I'm all finished. So I will stop for today, and then I'll pick it up again tomorrow. I'm not quite finished for the day because it's just really bothering me that it's just not right. And I can't quite stop when it's not right. So I'm just going to work on it here a little bit. I'm going to use my fingers. I'm not going to worry about the glove because that didn't work for me. Now I'm just going to keep throwing down color until I'm happy. I'm starting to like that better. Something doesn't feel right, you know it, and you just have to keep working with it, and it'll eventually do what you want. I'm bringing in a little bit of Pain Gray down in some areas here. My favorite little scrumbler brush. Okay, now I think I can let that sit overnight. I don't know, I may fool around with it a little more. Okay, after standing back and looking at it, I realize I can't quite give it up yet for the day. Okay, I touched this up a little bit last night before I called it quits, and I actually taped that section, but the lighting wasn't good, so I didn't keep the recording. But all I did was I finger painted in some more detail on the trees. I added some more Payne's gray and a little bit of Mars black and some light color, warm gray, and maybe a tiny bit of white and a little bit of the raw umber, and that helps my tree stand out a little bit. Now today, I'm hoping to finish this morning, I'm going to lighten up some area here so that your eye can follow that path back in there. And then I'll work on the grasses back here. I don't really want them this dark. I had added some shadows using Payne's gray, which I really like. It's just a little bit softer than black, but it's still a little dark back in here. I want to brighten it up some. Okay, now I'm a lot happier with the grass area back in here, and I'm going to get my favorite little Frasley brush out now and start adding some highlight to the trees branches, and some of this area. This is a little brush that used to be a fine tip for outlining, and it's become frazzled over time, and you'll see me using it a lot in my videos because I like to use it for adding sea foam on a seascape, and it's really nice for just adding highlights. Okay, so now I have the details in my tree, and I have a few little bright spots down here on the ground, kind of keep your eye moving around, and I think I'm happy with that, so I will leave it like that, and the path just wanders on back behind the tree. There's a little water down here, and it's overall a nice, peaceful scene. That is the way that I remember that day.